In this special programme, we look at the life and music of Gary Glitter and the events which have led to his extraordinary downfall. 1975, glitter mania is at its peak. In just 3 years, the leader of the gang has sold 18 million records and the fans are going crazy.
The hysteria was amazing. There were literally hundreds and hundreds of fans out there.
Glitter's style influenced a generation.
You love me too, love. I love you, love.
The massive hair, that's what you see, the terrifically high heels, and well, the costumes. When he's doing all the jerking movements, that's basically what you think of when you think of Gary Glitter.
Boland, Bowie and Brian Ferry of Roxy Music, they were the cool end of things, but for the masses, for the mainstream, Gary Glitter remains Mr. Glam Rock.
I can't think of any other singer who's actually brought so much joy and fun into music. He's definitely a one-off. He's a supreme performer. You know, superstar.
But along with the glamour and fame came the excesses too.
He absolutely went berserk. You know, started crying and screaming and shouting, and it destroyed his whole penthouse suite in the hotel.
I think he compensated by being able to have affairs and relationships that were more transitory, more readily available, easy pickings. I would be dispatched to go and sort out maybe half a dozen girls who would be allowed into his room to have their autographs signed.
He has his downs when he's obviously indulged in substances which haven't done him much good, and then he's come back and said, you know, what I've done is wrong and it's dreadful, but that's created him to make a comeback again.
The gang come in and they say, we want you, leader, to give us some rock and roll. And I say, yes! Yes!
Gary Glitter's original family home was here in Banbury, Oxfordshire. He was born 55 years ago after his mother had an affair with a local factory owner. The young Paul Gadd spent 18 months of his childhood in care homes. By school age, the family had settled in Croydon in Surrey. He'd taken his stepfather's name of Russell and was already standing out from the crowd.
We were all in school uniform in those days, and Paul, as his name was, had all the latest clothes on. And he was quite, I suppose, in a way, in those days, a bit of a sensation.
What he wanted to do was to sing and be a performer. It was so stark, that's all that he wanted to do.
Glitter started hanging around Soho, singing wherever and whenever he could, and hoping to be spotted. It worked, and this was his first single, released under the name Paul Raven.
A flame burning so bright. Oh, now I'm alone and lost in the night.
To be honest, it was awful, but the thing was, he had actually got into a recording studio and made a record, and this is what he always said he was going to do.
None of Glitter's early singles made much impact. He kept reinventing himself using different names, not just Paul Raven, but Paul Russell and Paul Monday. At one stage, he even tried being called Rubber Bucket. In 1965, he followed in the footsteps of the Beatles to Germany. There he fronted the Boston Show Band, formed by John Russell. Conditions were tough. They'd often have to perform in clubs right through the night, and to keep them going, they used drink and drugs.
There used to be a Toilettenfrau. There's a lady who used to look after the toilets and everything. She would say, I've got something for you, you know, 1 mark, you know, and there's little white tablets. And so, you know, we thought, oh, we'll try this, because we're, you know, it was really tiring. And it was amazing. You took one of them, and the trouble is, you didn't go to bed for 2 days. The problem with Paul out in Germany, whereas in the beginning one would do the trick, and after a fortnight you would take in 4, 5, and usually about every 2 or 3 months Paul used to sort of completely burn out and would not be capable of performing anymore.
In Germany, Glitter met Slade's lead singer Noddy Holder, as they later discussed on television.
You were the star attraction there. Do you remember? You had that show band out there.
I certainly do remember.
And you took us one day because we were all starving because the gaffer there, he never paid anybody. He used to
That's
pay
right.
you.
Manfred Voiteller, his name was. If he's watching, I'll get
he's
late
dead.
one on him.
He's dead now.
He's not,
yeah,
is he?
He's
Oh,
dead,
well, sorry about that.
He got shot.
I'm not surprised.
Somebody shot him. But you took us out one day.
He must have been a member of a band, right?
Yeah.
It must have been.
You took us out one day to find the cheapest meal in town. It was pea and ham soup, and we lived on that for a month.
But despite moderate success in Germany, what Glitter really wanted was to make it back home. He realised a new image was crucial, but there was a problem. By now, his hair was fast disappearing.
He had very thin hair, he used to sweat a lot, and of course it all used to sort of crimple up on his head. So there came a time when with a bit of help from all of us in the band, we sort of got together, and he actually considered the idea of getting a hairpiece. Later on in the Glitter years, of course, the bigger the success, the bigger the wig got. And of course, it was the best kept secret in show business at the time.
You get up and I usually got a hair appointment anyway for that day. You can't see yourself as a sex symbol. I don't think anybody tries to put me out as that way. However, if somebody digs me enough to think that I am, then fine.
In 1970, Glitter returned to Britain, but the stardom he longed for still eluded him. He was on the verge of quitting. He went as far as applying for a job at Selfridges in London, but found he couldn't go through with it. Then one of his old friends, record producer Mike Leander, had an idea. The groundbreaking combination of glam rock music and image that would create Gary Glitter. Leander, in the check jacket, produced songs like I Love You, Love Me, Love, using a big sound and strong beat with catchy chants to turn Glitter's audience into his gang.
It was my #1 record.
And if you like, Mike Leander was Dr. Frankenstein, and Paul was a monster.
History was made at his first gig in an unlikely place, the small Wiltshire town of 𝐆𝐿𝐴𝐻𝑚, at the local council's assembly hall.
On 𝐆𝐿𝐴𝐻𝑚 that night, you could really see Paul Raven changing into Gary Glitter.
The atmosphere was absolutely electric. I remember the hall being absolutely packed out. I heard the drums, two drummers playing the drums to Rock and Roll Parts 1 and 2, which was his first ever hit record. So loud, and everybody was excited, and the curtains opened just this much, and there was Gary Glitter standing on platform shoes. They must have been this high.
That night was the first concert performance of Rock and Roll. It became Glitter's first big hit.
The Gary Glitter sound, or the Glitter band sound, was most influenced by two people, Elvis Presley and Phil Spector. And those two influences are important because they're all about two things: vastness and space. Very, very big, and probably more difficult to produce than it sounds.
Glitter returned to 𝐆𝐿𝐴𝐻𝑚 7 years ago to present a plaque commemorating that first night.
I award you the Heartbeat Rock plaque.
Thank you very much.
I suppose it's very much like where were you when Kennedy was shot and things like that. You do remember. Yes, I was here growing up in late 60s, early 70s. We were rebels, and that was part of it. Gary was part of that rebellion, I suppose.
In my eyes, he was so different because of what he was wearing. I think it was everything on the stage was shiny, glittery. It was glam. That's what I call glam rock.
More hits followed. In fact, Glitter's first 11 singles were all top 10 hits, a record not even the Beatles can match. His trademark anthem, Leader of the Gang, was #1 for 4 weeks.
I think, strangely enough, Gary Glitter has had a terrific impact on music.
You wanna be in my gang, my gang, my gang. You wanna be in my gang, oh yeah. You wanna be in my gang, my gang, my gang. You wanna be in my gang, my gang.
I hope probably be the first to admit that he's not one of the greatest singers in the world, but for the songs that he's done, like the leader of the gang, you don't really need to be. And the lyrics are interesting as well, because there aren't many of them. But that's the secret of his success, the fact that you just know the songs before you've heard them, because they're all basically the same. The rhythm is the same, and he's got this unique format.
Sure enough, Glitter kept repeating his formula for success, but as that success grew, so did the problems.
A lot of tantrums. You know, I'm not going on, them lights aren't right, the stage isn't right.
We had one low point after the gig in Perth, at the final gig of the Australian tour, when I think he was very depressed about finishing the tour, and it had been a very hard year anyway.
He absolutely went berserk, you know, started crying and screaming and shouting, and it destroyed his whole penthouse suite in the hotel.
It's claimed Glitter had been developing a relationship with an Australian woman, but his management were unhappy.
They didn't, as far as I could understand, feel that a long-term and mature relationship was going to be good for him. I think he compensated by being able to have affairs and relationships that were more transitory, more readily available, easy pickings. So, I mean, if we were on tour and there were several thousand fans outside the hotel, either looking for autographs or looking to get in to see him, I would be dispatched to go and sort out maybe half a dozen girls who would be allowed into his room to have their autographs signed. There wasn't anything else available. You can only choose from what is actually throwing itself at you. I mean, he didn't appeal to 25 to 30-year-olds. They weren't queuing up outside his door. If your choice is limited, you can only choose from what there is.
Meanwhile, tension was also building with the Glitter Band. They were having their own hits and rivalry was growing.
We were doing Top of the Pops every month with a record, either with or without Gary. Our tours were coinciding.
John Russell now runs his own ex-Glitter Band.
A lot of bad feelings started to come out of this. Unfortunately, I said, look, I'm going to call this a day, I've had enough.
But Glitter's troubles were far from over. He was about to press the self-destruct button on his own career.
I'm not saying that my music is very clever. It's great music to join in with. It's great music to dance to. That's the first thing. I mean, we made it purely from the discotheque audience point of view, originally, and not. I mean, there was no, nobody was saying, "Oh, yeah, this is really, really great introverted music." I mean, it's just pure physical music.
One of the best laughs you could possibly have in the early to mid 70s was catching Gary Glitter on TV, Supersonic or Top of the Pops, whatever it happened to be, and watching to see whether this week he's going to make a twit of himself and not manage to mime along. Poor old 𝐆𝐥𝐢𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫 was probably so busy camping it up and doing his absurd chicken dance and making sure that the baker foil wasn't sort of squeezing his backside out of the container that he forgot to coordinate his lips to the music.
In 1976, Gary Glitter made a shock announcement. After less than 4 years at the top, he was retiring. The reason he gave was a secret love.
Her name's Mary, by the way. So that the reason why I'm retiring is that I was married once, and show business destroyed that. And I had an affair a little bit later on, 4 or 5 years later, when I was, first of all, Gary Glitter, and show business destroyed that. So I felt that I owed it to myself to retire if I was going to make anything happen of this wonderful newfound love that I have.
When your favourite performer decides to chuck it in, you think, where do I go now, It's, as I say, at the bottom, it definitely fell out my world at the time.
Devastated fans rushed to buy tickets for Glitter's farewell tour, but he'd been strangely unable to answer some questions.
Is it more than love? I mean, is there something in it more than love?
What more could there be than love?
You're going to marry the lady?
I don't know.
Who is she and what is she?
I'm not going to say any more about it.
Aren't you going to miss the lavish waves that come towards you? Thank you very much indeed, Gary Glitter.
Thank you.
The reason soon became apparent. The whole thing was a publicity stunt. Demand for Glitter had been slowing down. Only 9 months after his retirement, he was making a none too astonishing comeback with exactly the right song for the moment and that same old Glitter style. The only trouble was he seemed to have forgotten how to handle a microphone. But nevertheless, the show went on and the crowd lapped it up. Even so, the glitter was still gently fading, and though his income was on the decline, his spending knew no bounds. At one point, he told an interviewer how he was spending £1,000 a week on clothes.
On new clothes or replacements? Well, yeah, replacements and new clothes. I mean, I do get through.
What do you do to get through so many clothes?
It's not so much what I do; it's what other people. I mean, a lot of kids get on the stage and they pull the clothes on, and I get kind of wild during the shows too, and I'm more likely to throw them into the audience. I love champagne for breakfast. It's like, it's like a kind of a more expensive Andrew's liver salts, isn't it?
It couldn't continue. Glitter spent the best part of the next decade paying off his debts. Many of his fantastic stage clothes were sold off in an auction at Harrods. The keenest buyers were his fans.
I was, 19, 20, so not a penny to my name. And I made my way down to Harrods. And I couldn't believe the actual array of costumes. And for the money, you know, it was pittance.
This is the same suit making an early film appearance when Glitter had a stab at acting.
Very striking indeed, and I can't believe I got hold of it.
And all for only £20. To raise more money, Glitter's next stunt was an ill-fated rock and roll circus tour. He had the usual stage strutting performance, the same throbbing beat, but even more outrageous costumes. It lasted just 3 nights. In 1984, he finally managed his only real hit in almost a decade, successfully adapting his style to a Christmas number. The undimmed energy of his performance brought back his original fans.
Gary Glitter's audience to begin with was 8 to 12-year-olds, people that responded to the fist-waving excitement of it all. I remember Gary Glitter suddenly appearing on the university circuit. I was at university at the time, and suddenly I remember all these 18, 19-year-olds rushing out to see Gary Glitter play live when you'd think they'd be going out to check the latest trendy alternative indie sounds.
But Glitter's rollercoaster life was about to take another nosedive, and this time the star was spiralling out of control. Facing a possible jail sentence after being caught a 3rd time drink driving, he took an overdose. Then newspapers printed the first public proof of his baldness. Much more seriously for Glitter, they also carried allegations of underage sex and beatings. But somehow, he managed to bounce back.
I think the popularity of Gary Glitter, and anybody who lasts a long time, it's reinventing yourself. I'm not talking about the things that have happened recently, but in the past, you know, he has gone through these problems in his life which people frown upon, but secretly they're quite interested.
Glitter gave up alcohol, became a vegetarian and started a new career as a TV chat show host with mixed results.
Next question, Gary, because you're new to this interview.
I'm certainly very new to it. How am I doing so far?
Like a duck to water. Going to have one yourself?
I am. I think I will. Now, I'm going to give Fanny another one.
There.
Right.
Right then.
He also starred in a touring musical.
The man with the quip, Cliff, and his 4 lads, Cliff, Richard, and the Shads. Who am I talking about? And right, Cliff, Richard, and the Shads. 2, 3, 4.
In the 1990s, Glitter seemed to finally become more at ease with himself. He'd settled into the rock establishment.
Absolutely thrilled the fact.
He made a cover of the old Animals hit, House of the Rising Sun.
The older you get, the funnier it becomes. It's not so funny when you get a 21-year-old prancing around in these costumes, but when you get somebody who, I'm not quite sure how old Gary Glitter is, he probably ends up to being 30, but I assure you he is slightly older than that.
But Glitter's next fall was to be something even his most loyal fans could hardly comprehend.
Gary Glitter eventually left Staple Hill Police Station just after 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Glitter found himself in court after taking his computer into a branch of PC World in Bristol for repair. Staff alerted police, who searched his flat in London, along with his home in the Somerset village of Wedmore. Glitter was charged with making 54 indecent pictures of children on his computer, the charges he admitted today. He was acquitted of 8 other sex offences involving an underage girl. Glitter was sentenced to 4 months in prison and will spend the next 7 years on the sex offenders register.
The future of Gary Glitter is very, very grim. He ain't ever going to recover from this. There is no way that involvement, dabbling in child porn on the internet is ever going to achieve rock and roll outlaw sheikdom.
Since Glitter's arrest, membership of his fan club has plummeted from 8,500 to 2,500. And back in Melksham, the plaque honouring one of the town's proudest moments is on rather less proud display, several feet up the wall.
The trouble with Gary Glitter is he's gone from one extreme to the other. He's gone from being this really cuddly, almost like the Queen Mum of pop. But now he's demonised, and rightly so.